Mange too, Rodney.
Hello.
I hope you're all doing well. Don't worry, everyone. You haven't tuned into a French YouTube channel. We are very much coming from the UK. I don't know why. I thought I'd just say hello in my my unnative French there. So hope you're all doing well. Why not? Listen, guys, we, as usual, we're going to dive into the latest tech news. We usually focus on AI and bring you the latest news and stories as we come across that and give you our thoughts literally live. I haven't even seen what this story is about. I've seen it briefly, literally 10 seconds ago, the headline. So Will's going to share a little bit about it. Just a quick update from yesterday's show, re the crypto hack regarding wallets and the dangers there. Check that video out. It's really, really important if you're in that space. There have been a few people sort of pushing out a few sort of updates. Lace Wallet announced that they haven't been affected by this hack. I think you said Trezor has put out a statement. Will, was that right?
Yes, Trezor has now put out a statement saying their hardware wallets are completely fine. And again, a reminder, as we and a lot of people have echoed as well, it's always just you're totally fine as long as you are verifying the addresses, particularly if the hardware wallet you are using, like the Trezor Safe 5, has a screen. Always check the screen of the device and don't necessarily trust the wallet address that's shown on your computer or your phone where you're using that hardware wallet. Trust the one that's running the firmware on the device itself.
Perfect. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Will. So that's just a quick update from yesterday. I thought it was worth just mentioning quickly. Listen, before we dive into the... Sorry?
Funny enough, we're still waiting for NPM to make a statement, or GitHub, or Microsoft even to make a statement on what happened. They haven't yet. And we're still waiting for confirmation that it's safe and there's updates to the packages that are affected. There are 18. I guesstimated yesterday that were about 20 packages. There were 18. And we're still waiting on confirmation that those have been patched and there are updates available that fix them. Still haven't had that, which leaves people a little bit uneasy, I think. For sure. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an ongoing story, no doubt. And we'll sort of just report back when and if we hear news. So just be careful, guys, out there. So listen, just want to say a huge thank you. Firstly, we had a couple of new subscribers yesterday, which was unbelievable. So firstly, thank you for if you had subscribed. It doesn't cost you anything, literally, to like the video, to subscribe, to drop a little comment in the comment section. It really does help support us. It shows a little bit of love. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us grow our channel. So really, really appreciate it. So if you can do those things, we'll be eternally grateful. And join us as we develop this show and hopefully improve our presenting skills along the way. But while we do it, we'll bring you the latest news in AI. So, Will, what caught your eye today? Well, I think this is it's caught my eye because, again, it's the wider topic which captures me the most, and I think it's an interesting conversation to have. And so it's not necessarily the article itself, though the article is interesting, but it's more the wider topic. Let me share my screen, as I always do. Let's click share. And here it is. So this article is Judge Skewer's 1.5 billion Anthropic assessment with authors in pirated book case over AI training. Now, this is an ongoing case between Anthropic, one of the leading labs in America for building AI. They build Claude, which we've spoken about on this podcast as well. And they are currently having a bunch of authors taking legal action against them for using copyrighted works in AI training, which is a hot topic in AI training. Is, these models, all of them, they get better the more data they see. And where do you get that data from? Well, traditionally, it's been obviously data sets that you can source, but more recently, it's been the internet. Large swaths of data which you can find publicly on the internet. And this has sparked quite a lot of debate, whether this is okay, whether this is a copyright infringement, whether this is just outright theft. And no one really has an answer. There has been a few court cases, and most of the time, it's thrown out. And I think this is what we should talk about. It'd be interesting to get your take on it. just seemingly what your opinion is. I'll give you mine as well, and let's talk about copyright within AI, because to get these models better, we're always told that we need to give it more data to get better, bigger, better, more data, improved models, and we're now starting to see the result of that. 465,000 books were alleged to be pirated works by Anthropic, and they wanted a settlement of $3,000 per book. I mean, you can do the maths. That's a lot of money. So yeah, that's the article. It's an ongoing story, but it caught my eye because of the amount that they want, and also the fact that it's just a hot topic in AI. What is your take on this, Ben?
Well, literally chucking me in the deep end. I haven't even had a chance to really digest this. Just to share with you guys, I usually like to absorb information, let it stew, and for me to mull over, to sort of think about
what makes
all the
it interesting
perspectives. Yeah. So what I make come out of my mouth right now, I may completely do. A 180, not 360, but 180. I was about to say 360, a 180 on it, as my opinion. So I think the first thing that jumps out to me is how the old models of industry, of property, of data, of information is colliding with the new technology models. Copyright, I don't know when that was first sort of invented, but it was obviously designed and created in a world which was very different to what it is now. So, and I think it's just another example of the collision of legacy structures clashing with the modern world. I mean, we've seen this multiple ways with like the music industry, CDs, tapes, vinyl. My brain's a bit frazzled this morning. It's far too early. Then where you had to actually go in and buy your CDs and maybe you'd pirate it and copy it and give it to your friend or whatever. But ultimately, it was a clear structure that you would buy music and you would own music. Then when obviously the internet came along and we had downloadable music and all the rest of it, the whole model it was like thrown into chaos. But what came out the other end is obviously a working model which seems to have settled down, if that makes sense. Content creators, musicians are putting their music on Spotify, for example, and whether they're all happy with Spotify and this new structure, I'm sure not everyone is. But ultimately, the models had to change with the way technology has evolved and the way the world has evolved. And musicians now make probably more of their money doing concerts and live performances than before. So they've had to sort of pivot their sort of the way they monetize their expertise and their skills. So it jumps out to me a little bit like that. We've got an old legacy system which is struggling to come to terms with the new world, and we're going to see multiple examples of this throughout the next few decades, I'm sure. So, in various sectors, in finance, we've talked about crypto and Bitcoin and all the rest, how it's going to change the whole legacy financial system. And it is changing the systems that we know. So that's my initial take on it. I don't yet have an opinion on whether it's right or whether it's, wrong. Obviously, somebody's, hard work should be rewarded and not just be, stolen by somebody else. I completely get that. But that's my just initial take on it. I think whether this is right or wrong, I think I need to probably just maybe think about it a bit more. I'd be interested to hear, your take on it, Will.
Yeah, so I think it's probably worth, before I give my opinion, caveating that I'm not a copyright lawyer and I don't know the ins and the outs of copyright law. This is genuinely me constructing an opinion from what I deem logical, and I'll be happy. I mean, it'd be amazing to get a comment, telling me otherwise, changing my mind. I think it's this, as you said, this is a frontier where we are seeing a new age of things, and we all have to work together to deem what is right and take the right path. So I love that this is a conversation. On face value of this, I don't necessarily understand why this is a copyright issue. And I'll explain why. When you think about the old days, as you said, like buying a CD and pirating a CD, you rip it, you burn it onto another CD. You have just made a copyrighted piece of work, right? You've got an exact copy of that on a CD which you can distribute to somebody. You're using that copyrighted work and you're not using it, using it properly. Again, likewise, if I go out and steal, a piece of music and I use it in my own music, and it's just an exact copy or too close to the original works, then that's a copyright issue. Where this is with AI training data is they've got these data sets from somewhere, right? So it's available somewhere from somebody. So it's been given to Anthropic, for example, but not necessarily Anthropic, OpenAI, whoever. And what they're doing is they're running it through a large language model in very layman's terms and training it using those words. At no point are they redistributing or reusing that data to do anything. It's not like it's stealing it. It's not like it's regurgitating. It's not trying to pass it off as its own. It's being used as data within a system, and you never see it again. Do you kind of get what I mean? It's not regurgitating or reusing or to try to claim that it's its own data. On the other side, in fact, you could ask it about song. Like for example, Billy Joel, right, a UK artist. You could ask him about Billy Joel's songs, and it won't try to pass off any of that information. It will know about Billy Joel and it will tell you about him, but it's not reusing. Are
you a fan of Billy Joel?
I do like Billy Joel. Funny enough, it came to my mind because often I back in the early days of like ChatGPT. I would ask ChatGPT like, "Oh, what's the meaning of this song?" with like ambiguous lyrics and things like that. And I'm like, "Whoa, it's sentient. How does it know? How does it piece that together? Wow!" So
mate, we're gonna have to play some Billy Joel later.
Yeah, why not? I would love that. I mean, you have the best playlist going, I think. So it needs some Billy Joel on it. But so this is my point, is that it's not copyright by the definition that I have in my head, but in traditional terms. Now, obviously, the people opening up these lawsuits, they feel they have grounds to do so, and I understand why it's a concern, and I get the knee-jerk reaction that you feel like it's been stolen, but I don't know if it necessarily has. The best likeness that I have is if you read a book, Ben, and you memorize that or take in the information and memorize the plot or the premise of that book, and then you regurgitate and tell me about that book, you haven't broken any copyright law, have you? So in my head, that's the most similar logical comparison. Is it's like if I read a ton of books, I'm not breaking copyright law. I mean, they're there to be read. It's there for the information to be out there. So. And I feel I don't necessarily know why some of these lawsuits have been chucked out, but a bunch of them have already. So there is obviously some agreement or disagreement over what copyright means, within the courts by different various judges, including this one. There is a lot of question to that settlement request. So that's my take on it. Yeah. It might be a hot take. I don't know. I'll happily be corrected.
No, I think it's a fair assessment as well. Again, it'd be interesting to hear from somebody from the other side of the fence arguing for the other case. It'd be interesting just to hear their perspective from a copyright perspective. But from your angle, I mean, that's a very logical perspective. It's almost like saying, well, you can't regurgitate any of the English language because somebody somewhere has written the word the and maybe, well, you've copyrighted that. It's like, what? It's like, at what point can information be shared without being copyrighted? If somebody having a conversation with somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. These systems are meant to mimic human intelligence, right? They're the closest comparison that we have for what these systems are is us, ourselves. And the closest likeness you can make is you read and you train yourself on information. You read articles, you read books, you listen to music, you watch movies. All of that is information that you are taking into your brain. And at some point, you might talk about that information, or you might be asked about it. Now, if you write your own book based on the copyrighted works, and you make it very similar, and then you try to pass it off as your own, that's a copyright issue. But that's not what these models are doing. It's equivalent to like telling me about Billy Joel, and then somebody saying, and then Billy Joel saying, "Well, you've stolen my works." Well, weren't they there to listen to in the first place?
Yeah. No. Interesting. Yeah. It's. I think the reality is, whenever there's an opportunity to, make money, lawyers tend to be interested.
As I said, I don't want to dispute the other side, because they obviously I do also understand that feeling of like why you knee jerk and go, wait a minute, what do you mean you've got my data and you're feeding it into us? Like, I do understand maybe where that feeling might come from. I don't know if that is a correct feeling, and I'm not dismissing it, because they obviously feel they have a case because they're taking it to the courts. That's not. Also, one other point I want to make is that it's not like we're not doing anything to also, funnily enough, these models need so much data that we're actually having to try and come up with ways to synthetically create this information, like to use AI models to create more data to give to future AI, to give to future AI models, future systems. So it's almost like this is a gap anyway. There's only so much information in the real world. We actually need to go beyond what we already have.
No, absolutely. What's interesting as well, actually, because we were talking about yesterday, just during our working day, talking about open source software, and we're doing a project which is taken, which is garnering a bit of interest, which is phenomenal. Maybe you could touch on that in a moment, but it's quite interesting, isn't it? The open source software is very much like, there it is, out to the world, and do what you want with it. Whereas these legacy sort of ways of operating or monetizing a business, and with protections like copyright and things like that, again, that was designed for an old world. But you just think, it's just that it's so different in terms of that ethos. So it's just it's just an observation more than anything. So I haven't really got anything to add other than an interesting observation, how you got this open source community of software and technology.
It's true. Yeah. It's true. The open source community is fantastic. I mean, that's a completely different premise under the guise that, if everyone works on something collectively, then everyone benefits and everyone wins. I mean, it's a very different model to like modern capitalism, or modern, if you're building a proprietary piece of software, it's a very different model with its own pros and cons, as does closed source software have. But it's just, I think the attitude is completely different. Not all open source software is created equally. There's different licenses you can attach to open source software to allow different copyright, usage. But again, it's amazing the amount of software that is just out there, and go, yes, you can copy, you can distribute, you can modify, you can improve, you can do whatever you would like with it, and under like an MIT license, for example. I'm going to sneeze, I'm very sorry.
Nothing wrong with a good sneeze, mate. Nothing wrong with a good sneeze. Let it out, buddy.
I suffer from allergies. But no, there is a fundamental difference between like the open source attitude, or a lot of the open source. I mean, it's ironic, really, because the amount of technology that is built on top of the people that have built this initial open source software and just put it out to the world, not made a penny off of it, never will. They've done it purely for the good of the world. That's amazing. There's people like that, and that attitude, I think, sometimes should be a bit more, adopted. It'd be nice to think that, especially with AI, that we're building towards a crazy future which we should all be part of, and we should all be discussing. And it's not. There's a lot of walls going up, which I understand. I just don't necessarily think it's the most productive way forward for other people.
No, I think these legacy systems is ultimately like gatekeeping, isn't it? It's about trying to sort of protect your monetary value. and it's a way to gatekeep it and a way to protect your piece of the pie. But I just see that whole system it's just not fit for purpose in this modern age. So that's my sort of brief take. I mean, I've already said, briefly outlined my perspective. And, that's it really.
Yeah. I think that is the crux of it. No, it's an interesting ongoing conversation. I do like watching news articles like this and seeing how the legacy system is approaching these new conversations, whether that be within AI or within the crypto sphere, which obviously we've spoken about a little bit this week and a little bit last week as well. So it is fascinating. I think the most important thing is that everyone keeps an open dialogue and that we keep discussing how to roll these technologies out to be good for everybody involved.
Yeah, and the legacy institutions and infrastructure has to adopt to the new world, basically. So, and the judges are obviously throwing this out. So, interesting.
Yeah,
so maybe they're on our coming in from our angle. Maybe again, don't know enough about it. But let's wrap it up. Well, I think the audience have had enough of our wittering. So if you're still here, appreciate it. Like I said, give us a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, let us know what you think. We want to engage with you and hear what you've got to say. Don't be shy. We're friendly. We're nice guys. And other than that, we'll say goodbye and we'll tune in tomorrow and bring you the next sort of story that we come across.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching.
Brilliant. Take care, guys. Bye.